Tower? Is anyone there?
Simon's voice still held stable, but the slight tone of panic had started to set in. He'd been flying for far too long. His plane would be heading to Earth with or without his blessing soon.
Well, Tower, if anyone is there, I'm coming in. It's not a choice, it's a necessity.
The call was still left unanswered. He peered around, tilting the plane to catch a better sight of the ground below. The motorways left empty, the farmers' fields unattended, the petrol stations littered with abandoned cars, trucks and bikes. He'd been airborne for ages, or since he was handed a small leather bag, no bigger than a good book, and almost shoved up the stairs and into the pilot's chair.
No questions, cash on delivery. Take this, fly it there.
They were the last words he'd heard from anyone. From the man with the black sedan, dressed in black with deep-set black shades. Simon had chuckled when he first saw him get out of the car, mainly at the irony of his newest employer's name, Mr. Blythe. The man seemed anything but carefree. Simon wasn't a pilot by trade, but he had his license and would occasionally take on the odd private flight to help pay for a nice trip, or to fill the gaps in the joint account that his impulse purchases often left. This job would pay for one hell of a nice trip. They'd be able to go anywhere in the world for at least a couple weeks, and the job should have only taken a few hours, meaning he wouldn't even need to fill up the tank before returning home. Now though, the fuel was close to fumes, and he'd have to land, even if it wasn't announced.
Well, Tower, if anyone is there, I'm coming in. It's not a choice, it's a necessity.
He tilted the plane once more, turning it swiftly and elegantly, but as he began to line it up with the runway, he had to quickly shoot out his left hand to stop the small leather bag from sliding off the seat. The leather was soft and supple, a light shade of brown with brass clasps keeping it securely shut, but as it fell into his hand and off the seat, he heard a distinct clink.
Gold, coins, something else. Something in a bottle.
The endless options and possibilities rattled around his head, and the temptation to twist the little brass clasp and see what was inside was growing. Simon had never been very good at ignoring his curiosity. However, the mystery parcel would have to wait. He needed to get his bird back on the ground before she spluttered and made the call for him. He lined her up with the empty runway, the usual hustle and bustle of a medium-sized airport replaced with dead stillness.
Well, last chance to organise my welcoming party. I'm coming in.
Simon said with a facade of tongue-in-cheek, disguising his growing concerns. Yet again, he was greeted with silence. As the rubber squeaked upon making contact with the tarmac, the growing ball of anxiety in his stomach dissipated, easing off, just like his throttle. He grabbed the leather bag and headed for the exit. Opening the door and lowering the ramp, he was stunned by the quiet. There was just the wind. No engines, no planes, no cars. Nobody. The clank of his boots on the stairs resonated, becoming the loudest thing for miles. He waited, but nobody came. Not Mr. Blythe, not a single member of airport staff, not even a mouse, and soon the dead quiet and lack of distractions and the emptiness became too much. He had to see what was clinking in the leather bag. He had to know what was worth so much. He twisted the brass clasps one by one, turning with a click. He flipped open the flap to find two items, a piece of paper folded neatly twice, and a small vial of thick, viscous white liquid. Taking the vial in his hand, he played with it in his palm, rolling it from side to side. It was no bigger than a battery, smaller than a cork, and weighed very little. He unfolded the paper, and his eyes bulged at the writing inside.
You're all that's left. Thank you, and congrats on being the last human alive. The bleach is for when the silence grows too loud. I'm sorry.